We are only a few hours away from the UFC 276 pay-per-view, and this has to be the most stacked fight card of the year with Israel Adesanya and Jared Cannonier headlining for the UFC Middleweight Championship. As we all know, Israel Adesanya has been the UFC Middleweight Champion since 2019, when he initially defeated Kelvin Gastelum to win the interim title and followed up with a big knockout win over former champion Robert Whittaker to unify the UFC Middleweight title. Since then, Adesanya has been on one of the best runs you will ever see in middleweight history. He has successfully defended his belt against two of middleweight's renowned hard hitters in the form of Yoel Romero and Paulo Costa. He then went up to light heavyweight and was unable to get the job done against Jan Blachowicz, failing to capture the UFC light heavyweight title and become a double champion in the process. And since then, Adesanya has fought twice at middleweight with two big wins over Marvin Vettori and Robert Whittaker, respectively. On the other hand, we have the challenger, the ever-dominant Jared Cannonier, who will be heading into this fight with two back-to-back wins. Cannonier's last fight saw him absolutely dismantle Derek Brunson, and the fight before saw him beat Kelvin Gastelum via decision. So first and foremost, I know most of us are quite hyped up for this entire fight card. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if, by the end of the main event, some fans are left frustrated because of how things will play out. Now, the reason I say that is because if you have watched Israel Adesanya's last two fights against Vettori and Whittaker, you probably have realized by now that he has been playing it safe with his opponents recently. And because of that, I am certainly not complaining or criticizing Adesanya's style of fighting, because you cannot blame him for fighting in such fashion if you look at things from his perspective. So of course, with that being said, I think it's fair to say that we won't be seeing the flashy version of Israel Adesanya in this fight as well, especially against a guy like Jared Cannonier, who is so ridiculously powerful. I mean, this guy used to compete at heavyweight at one point, so you could probably imagine the massive strength and power he has got in those hands. So the reason I believe that some fans might be left frustrated by the end of UFC 276 is because we might see Izzy stick to his technical style of fighting, which I think could absolutely be the right call on his behalf in this fight, because there is obviously no need for Adesanya to try and aim for a flashy knockout against Cannonier that would potentially put Adesanya in a vulnerable position in this fight. Rather, he could just jab his way through the entire 5 rounds and eventually walk out with a decision win. I mean, knowing Adesanya's style of fighting and having seen Jared Cannonier's last few fights, I think it's fair to say that we can expect Adesanya to connect a lot more with his jabs and his traditional leg kicks that he so often uses. We all saw what Izzy did to Yoel Romero in their fight with those leg kicks, and we also saw how technical Izzy can be with his striking. We saw it when he fought Paulo Costa and absolutely pieced him up heading into that second round. So, if Izzy decides to stay more sharp with his striking, I think we might see him piece up Cannonier. But obviously, like I said before, I don't think that will be the case here. I think rather we are going to see Izzy play it more safe and not fall into Cannonier's traps, because if Cannonier catches Adesanya with one of those big powerful strikes, there are chances that he might shut down Izzy's lights. In the past, we saw Cannonier struggle against Robert Whittaker when they fought at UFC 254, and Cannonier especially struggled with his striking while Whittaker was constantly getting the upper hand on him, especially with those jabs. So of course, I'm absolutely expecting a technical striking performance from Israel Adesanya. I think we're going to see him invite Cannonier into his range and then constantly work with the jab, tag him every now and then, and win this fight without putting himself in a position where he could potentially be in danger of getting knocked out. So with that being said, my final predictions for this fight is of course a win for Israel Adesanya. I think he gets it done via a decision and retains the UFC middleweight title once again. So UFC 276, I couldn't be more hyped up for this pay-per-view. An incredible card we have on our hands, and if you ask me, this is the card where you cannot miss any of the fights, even starting from the early prelims. Let me know your predictions for Adesanya versus Cannonier. Thanks for watching this video.